he asked a taxi driver to be his fake wife to protect his reputation, but she ended up saving in his soul instead. Millionaire asked a taxi driver to be his fake wife, but she saved him from a scandal. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss our cinematic stories. And tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. Now, let us go back to our main character. Rain hammered against the windshield as yellow city lights bled through the downpour. Emma Hayes tightened her grip on the steering wheel, guiding her cab through the midnight traffic of Manhattan. It was her last ride of the night, and her gas tank light was already blinking red. The radio crackled with a weather warning, but she only half listened. Every hour on the road meant one more bill she could pay. One more day she could keep her little brother in school. The back seat was empty until a black umbrella slammed against the window. A tall man in a soaked tuxedo opened the door and stepped inside. The scent of rain and expensive cologne filled the car. His voice was low, clipped, the kind that came from someone used to giving orders. Grand Regent Hotel, and drive fast. Emma glanced at him through the mirror. His jaw was tense, his tie loose, and his phone screen glowed with a dozen missed calls. The name on the caller ID flashed once Adrian Cole. She recognized it instantly. The tabloids had been talking about him all week. Millionaire CEO cancels engagement hours before charity gala. She swallowed hard. Rough night, huh? He did not answer. His eyes stayed on the storm outside, like he was watching his world collapse in the reflection of the glass. Traffic slowed near Fifth Avenue. That was when he spoke again, his tone quieter. Stranger. Do you believe people can act their way out of disaster, miss? Hayes, Emma Hayes, and I am a driver, not an actress. He gave a faint, humorless smile. Good, because I need someone real to pretend for. Me. Emma blinked. Pretend? He leaned forward, his gaze steady. Be my fiancé, just for tonight. Walk into that ballroom with me and smile like you belong there. The words hung in the air, absurd against the hum of the rain. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. You are kidding, right? But his expression did not change. My investors are waiting inside. The press is circling. If I show up alone, the deal dies. You will get $10,000 for one night and a contract that clears your taxi debt by morning. Emma's heart pounded. She stared at him, the immaculate suit, the eyes that hid exhaustion behind arrogance. Everything about him screamed danger and opportunity all at once. I am not the kind of woman you hire to stand beside you, she said softly. He met her gaze in the mirror. That is exactly why I am asking you. The wipers scraped one long streak across the glass. Outside, the hotel entrance shimmered in gold light, photographers already waiting under the awning. Emma's pulse raced. Rent was overdue. Her brother's tuition bill sat on the kitchen counter at home, and this man, this stranger, was offering her a lifeline wrapped in madness. Just for tonight? She whispered. Adrian nodded once. Just tonight. She pulled the taxi to the curb, took a breath that tasted like rain and fear, and turned off the meter. Then let us get your story straight, Mr. Cole. For the first time that night, he looked at her, not like a driver, but like an answer. And that was how a poor taxi girl stepped out of her cab and into a contract that would change both their lives forever. Inside the Grand Regent Hotel, chandeliers glittered above a sea of tuxedos and sequined gowns. The marble floor reflected flashes from camera bulbs outside. For a moment, Emma Hayes stood frozen near the entrance, still wearing the driver's jacket she had thrown over her borrowed dress. Everything around her smelled of perfume, champagne, and money things that did not belong to her world. Beside her, Adrian Cole adjusted his cufflinks with quiet precision. He looked calm, but his jaw flexed with tension. His assistant hurried up with a tablet in hand, whispering about the reporters waiting by the stage. Adrian barely nodded. He turned to Emma and said, "We do not have much time. If anyone asks, we met 3 months ago in London. You were working on a charity project I sponsored. We reconnected in New York last week." Emma blinked. "You have this all planned out already?" He handed her a small folded document from his inner pocket. This is the contract. Read it if you want, but it is simple. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. It was typed in clean legal lines, short and cold. She would attend 3 public events as his fiancée. She would never discuss his personal life. She would keep all payments confidential. Any emotional involvement would void the deal. At the bottom, his signature was already waiting. She looked up at him. You really put a rule about feelings in here? He met her eyes evenly. Feelings complicate business. Emma took the pen he offered, hesitating for one last breath. Then she signed. The gold ink shimmered under the chandelier. Adrian exhaled quietly, as if a storm inside him had calmed for a second. Good. Now remember this. No one can know you drive a taxi. Tonight you are my fiancée, Emma Hayes, founder of the Hayes Youth Literacy Fund. She gave a nervous laugh. That is a pretty name for a fake charity. Then make it sound real, he said, placing his hand lightly at her back as they stepped toward the ballroom. The double doors opened. Applause and music burst out like heat from a furnace. Reporters turned, flashes exploded, and in that instant Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. She forced a smile and linked her arm through his. Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. Breathe. Just follow my lead. They walked down the long red carpet between tables covered in crystal and silver. Emma's heels clicked against marble, echoing louder than her heartbeat. Every glance from the crowd felt like a test she was doomed to fail. But when a photographer called her name, Miss Hayes over here, she somehow turned and smiled, like she had done it 100 times before. A waiter passed with glasses of champagne. Adrian took 2 and offered her 1. To surviving the first minute, she clinked his glass. Do I look like I belong here? He studied her for a moment. You look real enough. That is what matters. Halfway through the evening, the master of ceremonies called Adrian to the stage to present an award. Emma stayed seated, surrounded by people who whispered about her diamond ring and the mysterious fiancé no one had ever seen before. She smiled politely, pretending not to notice. When Adrian began his speech, the spotlight washed over him, outlining the sharp angles of a man who looked powerful but strangely lonely. He spoke about integrity, vision, and trust words that sounded rehearsed until his eyes found her across the room. Then his tone softened, almost human. He ended with, sometimes the right partner is not the one the world expects. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed again. And for a fleeting second, Emma forgot that everything between them was written on a piece of paper. Later, when they slipped out through a side hallway, she leaned against the wall and exhaled. I cannot believe I pulled that off. Adrian smiled faintly, loosening his tie. You did more than that. You just saved a $20 million deal. She stared at him, half shocked, half amused. That is the strangest thank you I have ever received. He looked down at her, rain still clinging to his hair from the night air outside. Then let me try again. Thank you, Emma. And for the first time, his voice sounded sincere, not like a CEO giving orders, but like a man realizing the woman beside him might be far more real than the world he lived in. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains of the luxury suite at the Grand Regent Hotel. Emma Hayes woke up on the couch, still wearing the evening dress from the gala. Her phone buzzed beside her 6 missed calls from the taxi company, 1 from her landlord, and a text from her brother asking about rent. Reality came crashing back. Across the room, Adrian Cole stood by the window in a crisp white shirt, tie already in place. He was reading the morning paper, his face unreadable. The headline on the business section read, Adrian Cole's fiancé steals the spotlight. Emma sat up quickly. They actually printed that? He lowered the paper, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth. Welcome to my world. Appearances are everything. Her stomach turned. I was supposed to disappear after last night. Adrian set the newspaper aside and walked toward the marble desk. A neat folder waited there, embossed with the gold Cole Media logo. That was before the board called at sunrise. They were impressed. They want to see more of you. So, we extend the arrangement 2 more public events, starting this weekend. Emma frowned. Extend? That was not in the deal. He opened the folder, revealing a revised contract. New terms. Same rules. You will be compensated accordingly. She crossed her arms. And what are the rules this time? He recited them like lines he had rehearsed. No real names, no emotional involvement, no statements to the press, and you do exactly what I say in public. Her voice was quiet but steady. And what do I do in private? For a heartbeat, the air shifted. His expression softened, then hardened again. You rest. You stay invisible. The world cannot know who you are. Emma looked at the gold ink on the new contract. She thought about the rent notice taped to her apartment door and her brother's tuition bill waiting on the counter. Her chest tightened. She took the pen. Fine. But I am not a doll you can move around, Mr. Cole. I have my own limits. He nodded once. Noted. When she signed, his shoulders relaxed slightly. My driver will take you to the penthouse. You will stay there for the next few days. A stylist will update your wardrobe. Consider it part of the job. Her eyebrows lifted. A penthouse? That is a little much for a fake fiancé. He met her eyes. It is easier to keep you out of sight when the world thinks you are living beside me. Later that afternoon, the elevator opened to the top floor of Cole Tower. The view of Manhattan stretched endlessly, sunlight scattering across glass towers. Emma stepped inside the apartment, feeling out of place among the marble floors and silent paintings. A woman in her 40s greeted her politely. I am Mrs. Landon, Mr. Cole's house manager. This way, please. Every room looked like it belonged in a magazine. In her temporary bedroom, a dress hung ready on a stand, sleek, silver, perfect. A note beside it read, For Saturday's charity auction. Emma brushed her fingers over the fabric, feeling the weight of it. She whispered to herself, What am I doing here? A voice from the doorway made her jump. Learning fast, apparently. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand. His tone was lighter this time. You handled the press last night better than half my PR team. I just told the truth, she said. That is why it worked, he replied quietly. He stepped closer, holding out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, gleaming under the light. You will need this for the next event. She hesitated. It looks real. It is supposed to. She slipped it on, the metal cool against her skin. What happens if someone finds out it is? Fake? Adrian smiled faintly. Then we lie better. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. She caught herself staring at the faint, tired lines around his eyes, the weight he carried beneath the calm. Finally, he broke the quiet. Dinner is at 7. And Emma, thank you again for last night. He turned to leave. She looked at the ring once more, its reflection shimmering against the city skyline. Somewhere deep down, she wondered if every rule in that contract was about to break, one heartbeat at a time. 3 days later, the penthouse buzzed with quiet preparation. Stylists moved through the rooms carrying boxes of gowns, shoes, and accessories. Emma Hayes stood by the full-length mirror as one of them pinned the hem of her new dress. The soft blue satin shimmered when she moved, nothing like the second-hand clothes she used to wear behind the wheel of her cab. Across the room, Adrian Cole was on a call with his board members, his tone sharp but measured. Yes, the media coverage has shifted. Keep the narrative clean. She is the reason the company looks stable again. He ended the call and turned toward her. You look nervous. Emma let out a breath. I feel like I am walking into someone else's life. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored suit. That is the point. Tonight's auction is about appearances. We sell illusions for a cause. You just have to smile and look like you belong. She looked at him through the mirror. And if I say the wrong thing, then you smile again, he said. Let me handle the words. By 7 o'clock, a black town car waited at the entrance of the building. The city lights below glimmered like scattered diamonds. As they rode together, Emma's reflection in the tinted window stared back at her same brown eyes, same calloused hands, but wrapped in luxury she could barely understand. Adrian's phone buzzed once. He glanced at the screen and frowned. The chairman's wife will be there tonight. She likes to test people. Do not let her corner you. Noted, Emma said quietly. When they arrived at the Manhattan Art Center, a crowd of reporters filled the steps. Flashlights flared as soon as they stepped out. Adrian placed a steady hand on her back. "Remember, you are my fiancé." Confidence sells the story. Inside, the hall glowed under golden chandeliers. Paintings lined the walls, each tagged with 6-digit prices. Waiters floated by with trays of champagne. Emma took one glass to keep her hands from trembling. People approached them in waves, investors, designers, and socialites, each one curious about the mysterious woman beside Adrian Cole. He introduced her smoothly every time. "Emma Hayes. She has a brilliant eye for community projects." She smiled, nodded, repeated the same polite lines, and somehow began to believe them. Halfway through the evening, the chairman's wife, Vivian Marlowe, approached. Her diamonds sparkled like tiny stars, and her voice carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "So, this is the woman who turned our cold-hearted Adrian into a fiancé. Tell me, dear, what do you do when you are not saving CEOs from loneliness?" Emma froze, but only for a second. Then she smiled. "I teach underprivileged kids how to read." "Words change lives." The woman tilted her head, half impressed. "And how did you meet our Adrian?" Emma could feel the cameras turning. "He once donated to our library fund," she said smoothly. "We met when I returned the check in person." The table laughed softly. Even Adrian's eyes widened slightly at her quick thinking. Later, when the auction began, Adrian leaned toward her and whispered, "That story was dangerously good." "I told you I am not an actress," she replied. "Just fast at making things up." As the night went on, the tension around them began to fade. Between glasses of wine and the soft hum of the string quartet, Emma started to see flashes of the man behind the headlines, one who watched the crowd carefully, who checked his watch not out of arrogance but out of exhaustion. When the final bid closed, applause filled the hall. Adrian stood to shake hands with donors, then guided Emma toward the balcony for air. The city stretched below, lights flickering against the dark sky. He loosened his tie and looked at her, something unguarded in his eyes. "You saved me again tonight. You have no idea how much that means." Emma smiled faintly. "I thought I was just following orders." "You were," he said softly, "but you made them sound like choices." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind brushed her hair across her face, and without thinking, he reached out to move it aside. His hand lingered for a heartbeat before he stepped back. "I should take you home," he said quietly. She nodded, but as they rode down in the elevator, the silence between them felt different, warmer, heavier, alive with something neither contract nor rule could contain. When the doors opened, Adrian's phone buzzed again. His assistant's voice came through the speaker. "Sir," a journalist from the Herald called, "they say they found something about Miss Hayes." Adrian's expression changed instantly. The air in the elevator turned cold. Emma looked up at him. "What kind of something?" He did not answer. The doors closed again, and in the reflection of the steel, she saw the first shadow of the storm that was coming for both of them. The following morning, the sun rose pale over Manhattan, washing the skyline in gray. Emma Hayes sat at the kitchen counter of the penthouse, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. Across from her, Adrian Cole scrolled through his phone, the calm mask back in place, though a flicker of unease broke through his eyes. "The Herald published something," he said finally. His voice was steady, but his knuckles whitened around the phone. "They claim you are not who you say you are." Emma's chest tightened. "What did they find?" "Your taxi license, your address in Queens. They have photographs of the cab you used to drive." The words hit like cold rain. "So they know I am not the founder of a fake charity. Congratulations, they discovered the obvious." Adrian set the phone down carefully. "This is not a joke. They are saying I hired you to manipulate the press. If the board believes that, everything we built will collapse." Her pulse raced. "You mean everything you built?" He exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Do not make this harder than it is, Emma. I am trying to fix it." "By lying more?" she shot back. "Because that has worked so well for you so far." The silence stretched. Outside, car horns bled through the glass. She stood, the chair scraping the marble floor. "I will pack my things." The contract said 3 events, not a scandal cover-up. "Wait." He stood too, his voice softer now. "I just need a few hours. Let me talk to my legal team. We can still control the story." Emma's throat burned with words she wanted to say but could not. She walked to her room and closed the door, the sound of it echoing through the empty penthouse. By afternoon, the story had spread everywhere on news tickers, gossip blogs, and social media feeds. Headlines read, "Adrian Cole's fiancé exposed as taxi driver." The photos were grainy, but unmistakable. Emma scrolled through the articles on her cracked phone, her heart sinking lower with each word. They mocked her clothes, her background, even her accent. She had faced humiliation before, but this was different. This time, she had helped write the lie they were now tearing apart. A knock sounded on her door. "Come in," she said quietly. Adrian stepped inside, holding a folder. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his perfect composure slipping. "My publicist drafted a statement. You can read it if you want." She took the papers and scanned the first few lines. "Miss Emma Hayes, a longtime partner of Cole Media's community initiative." She stopped. "This makes me sound like an employee you forgot to pay." "It is damage control," he said. "We need to protect the investors. Once this passes, I will make it right." Emma shook her head. "You cannot fix this with another performance." He stepped closer. "Then tell me how." She met his eyes. "Tell them the truth. Tell them I was a driver who helped you when you had no one else." Adrian's face hardened again. "That would ruin me. And what do you think this has done to me?" Her voice trembled, but she refused to look away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she handed him the folder and walked past him toward the door. "You can survive without me, Mr. Cole. You have before." That night, Emma packed her small suitcase. She left the penthouse quietly, without security, without cameras, and without the diamond ring he had given her. The elevator ride down felt endless, each floor a reminder of how far she had climbed into a world that was never meant for her. Outside, the rain had returned. She called an old cab driver friend who still owed her a favor. As the car pulled away from the tower, she looked back once. The city lights blurred behind the rain, the same way they had on the night she met him. Back in the penthouse, Adrian stood alone at the window. The city stretched below, silent and vast. His phone buzzed again, another message from his PR team, but he did not answer. He was staring at the empty space where she used to stand, realizing for the first time that his perfect world had begun to fall apart the moment a taxi driver stepped into it. For the first time in years, the man who controlled every story had lost the only one that truly mattered. The rain did not stop for 3 days. The streets of Manhattan glistened under the gray sky, and every headline carried the same words, "Adrian Cole's fake fiancé scandal." The story had gone viral. News anchors analyzed his downfall while tabloids tore into Emma's past. In a small apartment above a laundromat in Queens, Emma Hayes sat by the window watching drops slide down the glass. Her phone kept buzzing, but she had stopped reading the messages. There were reporters waiting outside the building, and her landlord had already asked her to leave by the end of the week. She turned the phone face down, pressing both hands over her face. A knock came at the door. "Emma, it is Carlos." She opened it slightly. Her old friend stood there holding a paper bag. "You have not eaten all day," he said. "I brought soup from the diner." She managed a small smile. "You did not have to do that." He shrugged. "I saw your face on television, girl. The news says you fooled a millionaire." Emma's throat tightened. "I never fooled anyone. I just wanted to help him, and maybe help myself a little too." Carlos sighed. "Then forget the news. The truth has a way of coming back." When he left, she sat down with the soup untouched, staring at the steam rising from the bowl. Somewhere above the city, she imagined Adrian sitting in his glass office, still trying to control the narrative, still hiding behind silence. Across town, the image was almost exactly that. Adrian Cole stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his boardroom, surrounded by lawyers and investors. The voices around him blended into static. Words like, Resignation, share price, and reputation risk swirled through the air. One of the directors spoke louder. Adrian, the simplest solution is a public apology. Blame her. Say she lied to you. He closed his eyes for a long second. When he opened them, his voice was low but steady. No. Every head turned. She did not lie, he said. I did. The room fell silent. His lawyer whispered urgently, if you admit that, the company will lose millions. Adrian set his pen down on the table. Money I can earn again, integrity I cannot. He walked out before anyone could stop him. The elevator ride down felt longer than any in his life. The reflection in the glass walls showed a man he barely recognized, tired, stripped of control, but finally, honest. That evening, he drove himself to Queens. No chauffeur, no security. The rain returned just as he parked in front of Emma's building. Reporters still waited outside, huddled under umbrellas. When they saw him, flashes lit the night. He ignored them and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. At her door, he hesitated before knocking. She opened it halfway, eyes widening in disbelief. You should not be here, she said quietly. They will twist this again. I do not care anymore, he answered. I came to tell you the truth. She stepped aside, and he entered, the scent of detergent and rain filling the cramped room. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them said everything, the lies, the mistakes, the distance. Finally, he said, you were right. I built my life on pretending. Every smile, every handshake, every headline, it was all a show. But you, Emma, you made me see what real looks like. Her eyes softened, but her voice remained careful. And what does that change, Adrian? The world already decided who I am. He shook his head. Then let me tell them who you really are. She laughed bitterly. You cannot fix me with another press release. I am not giving them a statement, he said. I am giving them the truth. She looked at him for a long moment, seeing the exhaustion in his face, the sincerity in his eyes. You could lose everything. He nodded. Maybe that is the price of finally meaning something. Emma turned away, tears burning her eyes. Do not do this for me. I am doing it because you saved me when I did not deserve saving. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. When she turned back, he was already at the door. Tomorrow morning, he said quietly, watch the press conference. Then he left, disappearing into the rain. Emma stood by the window long after he was gone, watching his car merge into the endless stream of headlights. For the first time, she did not know whether she feared losing him or what would happen if she got him back. The next morning, the city woke to chaos. News vans lined the street in front of Cole Media headquarters, their satellite dishes aimed at the sky. Crowds of reporters packed the sidewalk, microphones in hand, waiting for the man at the center of the scandal. Inside the tower, Adrian Cole stood behind the podium. A dozen cameras pointed at him. His suit was pressed, his expression calm, but the tremor in his fingers betrayed the storm beneath his control. Every executive from the company's board sat behind him, watching closely, waiting to see if he would protect the empire or destroy it. He took a breath and began. For the past week, the world has read stories about a woman named Emma Hayes. The truth is, I am the one who lied. Gasps rippled through the room. Flashes exploded. Adrian continued, voice steady. Emma Hayes did not deceive me. I asked her to pretend to be my fiancé to save a business deal. She did not chase fame, or money, or power. She helped me when I was drowning in my own arrogance. He paused, the weight of his words filling the silence. I was the one who created a lie. She was the only honest part of it. A reporter shouted from the front row, "Are you saying you are in love with her?" Adrian looked straight into the cameras. Yes. I fell in love with the woman the world calls a taxi driver, and she is worth more than everything I own. The room erupted. Questions flew in, every direction, but he did not answer another one. He stepped away from the podium and walked straight out of the building, past the reporters, past the flashing lights, into the cold morning air. In her small apartment across the river, Emma Hayes watched the broadcast on an old television. Her hands trembled as she turned up the volume. When she heard his voice steady, sincere, unguarded, something inside her broke open. The reporter on screen repeated, "Mr. Cole, are you stepping down as CEO?" His voice came through again, unwavering. "Yes, I am stepping down effective immediately. It is time someone else runs the company. I have something more important to rebuild." The screen showed him walking down the steps of the building as photographers shouted his name. He did not look back. Emma pressed her hand against her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time, she realized he had chosen truth over everything he had spent his life protecting. Outside her window, the city lights flickered against the morning fog. The rain had finally stopped. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of car horns faded into quiet, like the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. That afternoon, the press conference replayed on every major network. Commentators argued, analysts speculated, but the world had already made up its mind. Adrian Cole had done something no one expected. He told the truth. At her apartment in Queens, Emma Hayes sat in silence. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages pouring in from strangers all over the country. Some called her brave, others called her foolish. But one message stood out. It was from Mrs. Landon, Adrian's house manager. It read only 3 words, "He needs you." Emma stared at the screen for a long time, then grabbed her coat and ran. The cab she found was old, the meter cracked, but the driver gave her a soft smile. "Where to, miss?" "Cole Media Tower," she said. When she arrived, the crowd outside had thinned, but the air still buzzed with leftover tension. She spotted Adrian standing near the entrance, surrounded by flashing cameras. Reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them, his face pale, his shoulders squared in quiet resolve. Without thinking, Emma pushed through the crowd. Voices called her name, microphones pointed her way, but she kept walking until she reached him. "Emma," he whispered, surprised. "You should not be here." She lifted her chin. "Neither should you, but here we are." The cameras turned to them instantly. A journalist shouted, "Miss Hayes, do you have anything to say about the scandal?" Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her voice carried over the noise, steady and clear. "Yes, I do. Adrian Cole is not the villain the headlines made him. He made a mistake, but he owned it. And when no one else would stand beside him, I will." The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the flashes erupted again. Adrian looked at her, speechless. She continued, "He did not buy me. He respected me. He trusted me when the world turned its back. So if you want to write a story, write this. Sometimes the truth looks nothing like perfection." For a moment, everything froze. The reporters lowered their microphones. The noise of the city seemed to fade away. Then Adrian reached for her hand, the same hand that once gripped a taxi wheel in the rain. He said quietly, "You just saved me again." She smiled faintly through the tears in her eyes. "Maybe this time, it will stay saved." The crowd broke into scattered applause. Cameras caught the moment the billionaire and the taxi driver standing together, not as an illusion, but as 2 people who finally stopped pretending. Later that evening, the headlines shifted. Emma Hayes speaks out, love over scandal. Editorials praised her courage. Cole Media's stock steadied. The storm had passed, but something new remained in its place, something real. When they finally left the crowd behind, walking down the quiet street side by side, Adrian looked at her and said softly, "No more contracts, no more lies." Emma squeezed his hand. "Then let us start with the truth." And for the first time, the truth was enough. 2 months later, spring returned to New York City. The air carried the faint scent of rain, but the city had begun to bloom again. Emma Hayes stood on the sidewalk outside a small community center on the Lower East Side. A new sign hung above the door in silver letters. Cole and Hayes Foundation, stories that change lives. Children's laughter echoed from inside, mixed with the hum of volunteers setting up shelves of donated books. It was her idea, and Adrian had turned it into reality. Not a grand corporate project, but something simple and honest, an outreach program for underprivileged youth, the kind of work Emma used to dream about when she was driving nights through the city. Behind her, a familiar voice said, "You are supposed to be taking a day off." She turned to see Adrian Cole, dressed in a casual shirt, a cup of coffee in each hand. The sharp edges that once defined him had softened. He looked lighter, freer, as if the truth had finally given him room to breathe. "I tried," she said, smiling. "But the shelves needed labels." He handed her the coffee. "You never stop working. Neither do you," she teased. "Except now you get to work for something that matters." He nodded, his gaze warm. "You made that possible." They walked inside together. A group of teenagers waved from across the room, and Emma waved back, her heart full. On one of the tables sat a framed photo from the night of the scandal, the moment she had taken his hand in front of the cameras. The caption below read, "Sometimes truth begins where lies end." Adrian noticed her looking at it. "You still think that night ruined everything?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "No, it fixed everything that was broken." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a simple gold ring glimmered inside. No diamonds, no spotlight, no contract. "Last time I asked you to pretend," he said softly. "This time I am asking you for real." Emma's breath caught. The world around them seemed to blur, the laughter, the music, the city noise fading into a hum of warmth. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, Adrian. No more pretending." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she felt its weight light but steady, like a promise made of truth instead of fear. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft and steady, tapping against the windows. But this time, it was not a storm, it was a beginning. As they stood together watching the city glow beneath the gray sky, Emma whispered, "It is strange, is it not? Everything started in a taxi." Adrian smiled, "And ended right where it should have." They laughed quietly, their hands intertwined. For the first time, neither of them had to act, or lie, or hide. The story that began as a contract had finally become a commitment, real, honest, and earned. And for the two of them, that was the richest ending of all.